Hello, my name is Damian Lance. I'm with Sidechain Security, and today I'm going to walk through the setup and run of the Venafi CodeSign Protect task for the Azure pipelines that we've developed. There's a couple of steps to getting this thing up and running, from building our Docker container that's going to be running these operations, to setting up and configuring our pipeline, to then kicking the run off. I'll walk through each of these real quick, but for starters, I want to point you towards the GitHub repository that houses this project. It can be found at github.com/sidechaincconsulting/Venafi CodeSign task. And in this repository, you're going to find a README with notes on compatibility and functionality of this task, as well as all relevant files for the creation of the Docker container, as well as the actual source code for the task that isn't actually going to be needed in order to run the task, but it's present on our GitHub in case of any reference to that is needed. So for starters, we are going to create a Docker image. We're going to create a Docker image, and then we're going to create a container from that image. So creating this Docker image, we're going to use our Docker file. This is the same one that you'll be able to find in the GitHub repository. And this is going to take a base image. It's going to move over a Venafi CodeSigning client's MSI and a JDK17 MSI as well. You'll have to provide both of these files at the root directory, or at the directory of where you're going to run your Docker file, just as a heads up. And then what we're going to do is copy over startup.ps1, a little script we have, also found on the repository. And then we're going to kick off all the installers and set everything up. These two lines here relate to a local issue with CloudShare that is kind of specific to our setup here for what we've been doing for the testing and development of this tool. So these lines may or may not be needed in your run. So, for starters, going to build the image. This is going to run real quick. I'm going to just name it container dev latest. This is what I've been calling it during my development of this tool. You'll see it'll go really fast here because I have not made any changes since the last time I built this image. It may take longer depending on if this is your first time running through this. But after we build our image, we're going to run Docker compose up, and we're going to fire this up. So I'm going to start with this. Docker compose up. You see I'm in the directory that contains my Docker compose file. And I'm going to let this go. It will take a little bit of time to fire up and get started. While it's doing that, I'd like to show you, kind of what this file looks like. So docker compose.yaml. This is going to basically point us to our container dev latest image that I just created. Again, if you're calling your Docker image something different, you'll have to reflect that in here. And then also we want to point to a couple of environment variables that are necessary here. So first off, the URL to our Azure pipeline, devazure.com, / whatever our pipeline is going to be, and also a Azure pipeline personal access token here. So I've scrubbed this out so it can be on GitHub safely. And when you're setting this up on your side, you'll replace example with the relevant fields here. Okay, back to this, we can see that our pipeline is still kicking off. It is going to run slowly, get set up. And now once we see this note here that says that we're listening for jobs, then we are ready to go. We're ready to run our pipeline. From the pipeline, let me edit this. This is the pipeline that I've been using for the development of this. There's a lot in here that's mostly unnecessary. First off, we want to point to our pool agent. This is pretty important. Point to our pool of agents, rather. You'll see that this pool is the same as found in my Docker compose, which is going to point to the same AZP pool. A lot of commented out dev work going on in here, but the meat of this is actually our task right here, Venafi signing task. So if you've added this task, you'll be able to see by searching Venafi, you'll be able to see this in your task list here. And clicking on Venafi CodeSigning task after you've added this to your pipeline will allow you to add in instances of this task into your pipeline, and it will prompt you with every single variable that we need filled out here. So you'll see your authentication URL, HSM URL, valid Venafi CSP username and password. A whole lot of additional variables are going to be here. All of the definitions of these and expected values can be found on the README on the GitHub repository. One I would like to point out that's kind of important is which sign tool you want to use, whether we want to use Venafi sign tool or jar signer. Now you'll see I have this set up this way right here to run an instance of jar signer on just an example directory that I've filled here, c:/example jars. I've moved a jar file over here so that I can see this valid run. And let's go ahead and kick off our pipeline. You know, say we didn't have this before, we've added this to our pipeline now. It would prompt us up in this corner to save. However, I already have this prepped and ready to go. So I will run it, and we will check back in with its progress after it's ran. We're going to see this job has been kicked off and it's queued. I can go ahead and boot up in here, and we'll let this run. I'll check back in shortly once the job has begun running, and walk through a couple of what we expect to see here. Now from this screen, you'll see that we'll begin running through parts of our job here, and these are going to pass successfully. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to be able to see if there are any errors, where our errors are. Now, what we care about most right here is this part of the job, Venafi signing task. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this. This is where the custom component of our task comes in. So if this fails, it lets us know something's wrong with our code or our setup. But we'll go ahead and run through this. We'll actually see that it passed successfully quite quickly here. And this runs through, while deciding the parameters of this task, we're going to pick things like which certificate to use and all of that valid information that I briefly went over earlier. And we're going to be able to see a lot of that. You know, we're seeing our certificates get queried. We're seeing the process of running our jarsigner.exe here as requested by the pipeline. It would do the same thing if we were trying to run our CodeSign Protect on other pieces of code here. And you'll see this will finish successfully. It'll check out, it will finalize job, and it will clean everything up afterwards and you know, wrap it all up like that. And it really is that simple to run this task here. So if we went to run another example here, where maybe we want to try running a sign tool example. We're going to change this to sign tool from jarsigner, and I'm going to go ahead and set this to z:/. This is a directory that we'll have set up on our side. Just, you know, I think we have the calculator app in here, so there's some exe that we can sign. Again, just for demonstration purposes. This file's path can be whatever you want it to be on your Docker container. Important to note that we want to point this to a directory. This file's path, we're going to point to a directory, and we're going to attempt to sign everything inside the directory. So if you're using jarsigner, you will want to point to a directory that contains exclusively jar files. And if you're using sign tool, you want to point to a directory that has signable files as well. Otherwise, we'll see corresponding errors there. But I can run this. We'll make my save, make my change. Okay, we're here. We're running through this again. This is the job set up to run sign tool as opposed to jarsigner. We're going to get through everything just fine. We get to Venafi signing task. We're going to run through the familiar process again of retrieving our certificates before running the actual sign tool. And we'll see this run. We'll see this run successfully. It will pass. You see it will run sign tool a lot of information on the run can be found inside the job log here, and we're going to successfully close the job. Thank you for watching. This is how we run the Venafi CodeSign task that Sidechain Security has developed for use in Azure pipelines. I hope this was a helpful resource.